And the final bit here as to why are we going to talk about ethical culture now is the thing I did not see coming writing Stealing Fire. I was looking at broad historical anthropological trends, but the advent of the Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, digital narcissistic culture has done something as it's intersected with the psychedelic renaissance that I didn't see coming, and it terrifies me, which is a whole bunch of hungry ghosts dipping their toes into this space and the experience, not getting rid of their ego structures, not getting rid of their seeking fame, glory, power, sex, attention, you name it, and just bolting on psychedelics as an afterburner to that very experience. And what we're seeing is the rise of Instagram shamans, toad priestesses, the whole bit. We laugh, and it's actually gutting, because these are our best tools. This is all we've got. When Burning Man went from the largest transformational engine ever assembled on the planet to a kick-ass backdrop for my selfie posts, we're in different terrain. So that's the kind of approximate, just broad brush of the landscape of why now, why do we really need to talk about this? Because as I said, small groups, individuals, the numinous tends to steer us, tends to guide us. But as we scale this, right, into any kind of movement with global impact, we really have to think through the anthropological mechanisms of how do we architect conscious culture. Because what's happening right now is a collapse in meaning for the centrists. The Pew Research Foundation found 2 years ago that the nuns, the none of the aboves, I don't identify with any organized religion, are not only the fastest growing, but are now for the first time ever the largest group in the United States. And it plays through with Canada and the Western Europe as well. What's happening as that organized establishment religion, meaning-making, community, belonging, code of ethics, all those things is collapsing, is we're seeing a squishing to the extremes. We're seeing a rise in fundamentalism and a rise in nihilism. Right? That's the anxiety, depression, suicide, despairs. The people are like, where did all the meaning go? This feels really pointless. So we're in a pickle. Now the Sam Harrises, the Christopher Hitchens, the four horsemen of the new atheism, right? We're sort of tap dancing on the grave of old school, superstitious, hierarchical, tops down, opiate of the masses religion. And justly so. But there's babies and there's bathwater. Because what anthropologists have learned, and sociologists today even, is that religion serves mimetically, forget the dogma, forget what you believe, just that you believe. And that you're a part of a community of belief leads people to be healthier, wealthier, and happier than if you don't. You're like, that's interesting. So mimetically it's propagated, it serves a purpose. What on earth might that purpose be? So we kind of did some research on what are the core building blocks. And what we found were these three things. These are the nutrients that belonging to a community of belief offered. Specifically, ecstasis, the ability to access peak states that felt more important, more real, more uplifting and valorizing than our day-to-day grinds. On the backs of that comes catharsis, deep and profound healing. Right? Life beats us down. Up until very recently, it was nasty, brutish, and short. So to have a place to mend our bones, a place to lick our wounds, and a place to remember a little bit of what we forgot has been essential. And the final bit is we're social, tribal primates. We do this together. And when we have those peak experiences and the profound healing together, an invariable product is communitas, what Victor Turner at the University of Chicago uses as the term to describe a deeply bonded core group experience. And interestingly, Keith Sawyer at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, has done research on what he calls group flow, consider it sort of synonymous with communitas, and he's described it as 3 times more rewarding than being in those states by yourself. So powerful, and by the way, also weaponizable. If you look at a MAGA rally, It is pulling all the levers on this. If you look at jihadi recruitment, if you look at alt-right recruitment, right, you can come in through any of these doors. You can come in through the peak experience and be like, holy shit, and I still got work to do, and I found my brothers and sisters. Or you can find your brothers and sisters, say, I'm not a misfit toy anymore. That experience alone sends me to the ceiling of yeehaw, peak experience, and then we have our wounds to mend. Right? We can come in different points on that triangle, but that is sort of the engine of organized transformational culture. So here's the thing. I've been reading some of MLK's more subversive quotes lately. So a friend was just sending them to me. One of them was also, he said, what did he say? He said, a well-intentioned but poorly considered position is more dangerous than an ill-considered malevolent position. So it's sort of along the lines of the fools rush in, right? But this other one that he has, which is until, right, the people who are attempting to wage peace organize as effectively as those who are waging war, we don't stand a chance. So how will we do this? Because progressives in general have been super duper squeamish about asserting meaning for anyone. So we resort back to not better or worse, just different, cultural relativism, right? And no one asserting anything. And we all go back home after these experiences and attempt to build spaceships in our driveways. And that becomes problematic. So if we take a look at this, and we almost take a design thinking approach to this, we're like, okay, well, what would the anthropology be? You're like, what are the elements if you're trying to replace and update, upgrade meaning 1.0, which was basically all of human history of organized religious belief? What might meaning 2.0 look like? That's open source, that's scalable, it's non-dogmatic, non-doctrinal. What's the toolbox? What do we need to make sure we've covered so it will be healthy and vibrant and compelling so that it would naturally grow? The first thing is obviously you need a sacrament. And Michael Pollan famously in his most recent book said, all we've got are placebo sacraments these days. They don't actually do the job. So we need effective sacraments that reliably disclose the numinous, right? We also need a form of metaphysics. We need to understand how do we make sense of the great beyond? Because if we're dipping our toe into it, we have to have some meaning making, some sense making that actually tracks. Otherwise we get lost gathering wool. Then specifically, we also need an ethics. And that's distinct from something like the Ten Commandments, which was code-based and binary, basically morals. We live in times that are too complex and too nuanced for black or white morals, thou shalt and thou shalt not. But to take out all guardrails can be deeply problematic, right? Nietzsche famously said God is dead, but he also said, if you read the rest of the paragraph, he's like, and be super goddamn careful when you kill your gods, folks, because your morals go out the window too. So how do we reinstitute ethics, which is less about right specific, thou shalt not, and it's more about our relationship to our actions. The final ones are scripture. How do we tell our stories? And what stories do we choose to tell? And deities. As David Foster Wallace famously said, everybody worships. The only question is what? And can we move away from dominator sky gods to a more sophisticated, nuanced, and flexible relationship to archetypal entities and expressions of consciousness?